Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Pig's Ear in Review here at the Tojo Dojo, one of the only places where we've been talking about what we've been watching, what we've been playing, and this week, once again, what we've been reading. I'm Myshtuff, joined by Riku Rose. How you doing this week?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Been watching and playing a few things as well. It's been a busy couple of weeks with, what I'm about to talk about this week, which is Mandalorian Season 3, then we got Picard Season 3, and then obviously for you, like I mentioned, you've been reading something. So can you say the full title again?
The Hungry Caterpillar. No.
Yeah. Oh, yes, exactly.
Final Fantasy VII Remake, Traces of Two Pasts, a novel. That's the full title on the front of the book.
And as you said, Square Enix is just killing it with the names. So
once you read it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it ties in beautifully. So, but yeah, no. Let's. Given we have a few things to talk about, let's just get right into it, and I'll throw it over to you to start talking about the book.
Okay. Not normally one for like reading like the novels of like video games and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people always rave about the Halo ones, but I'm going to be honest. I played like 5 Halo games. I could tell you a thing that happens in any of the stories.
That's not important.
I guess there's the Halo and then the blue lady.
Yeah.
But as you know, Final Fantasy VII, my soft spot. I love that world. I even enjoy the movies and the spin-offs that people hate.
Yeah.
Even if I do see the problems in them.
Yeah, it's a cool universe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then this book came out. Apparently it came out in Japan like almost 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But it only just came out here, right?
Okay.
So it's actually written by the guy as well that did like the story for the games.
Okay.
So
well, sorry, can you remind me? Because there's the remake story and then there's the original. It's not necessarily the same, right? Or
yeah, it is kind of like.
Okay.
So those PS1 Final Fantasies were kind of written weirdly. Like if you go and look at the credits, it's going to say like written by so and so. But when you actually go back and hear about it, they were very weirdly written. There was some video about Final Fantasy IX. Where essentially they gave every developer like an area. So it was their job to like program that area and also write all the dialogue in that area.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it was like very, very strange how they did it, right? So it was kind of like a team effort, essentially, to keep it all together. This book's written by Nojima, who did write Final Fantasy VII Remake. He had involvement in the original, and he did like the spin-offs and all that.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
So that's also why I was interested in reading it, because I've seen like Resident Evil has novels and stuff, and I imagine a lot of those books are just kind of written by writers who are just sort of given this property, and they're like, go make something with this, and the people who make the games have it has no bearing on them, and they never even pay attention to it.
Yeah, the only tie-in things that I've read, it's been more so even recently, is some of the Star Trek comics. But as far as like actual novelizations of stuff of any franchise, like I'm trying to look at some of my books that I have on my shelf, and there really aren't that many, because usually it's what you just said, where it's almost like an afterthought. And I'm sure they're great, but like, do I really need to get into it?
Well, also as well, they, typical marketing as well. They're like, read this to find out the true story, blah, blah, blah. So this actually takes place just after the first remake.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then it is Tifa and Aerith talking about their pasts. So you get a bit of a hint about what's coming.
Interesting.
But not really, because it is literally like they're sitting in a field.
Yeah.
And one of them tells a story to the rest of the group.
Right?
Okay. So there's me reading this and like, right, let's find out based on that ending, are we going to get a full remake? Is it going to be completely different? And I learned shite.
But it's about the journey, not the destination, I thought.
Yeah. So the first story you read, it's like the whole book's like I think 350 pages, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first story I read was Tifa one, which is the one at the beginning first, obviously, and I was really enjoying it at the beginning. Shows her childhood in a village, and then sort of shows how she got to where she was at the beginning of the games.
Okay.
And it makes sense. Like, for the most part, the issue I had with the first story was I was really enjoying it, and then it felt like he got to page 140 and went, oh shit, I'm only meant to do 150 pages, and like quickly finished it. Because like there's like twists which just come out of nowhere to sort of sum up the story.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you're like, this makes no sense whatsoever. Like, you're rushed this completely.
Yeah. Weird. Okay.
Yeah. Then the Aerith one's a bit weird. Because Tifa's one, she's, for the most of it, she's like 16, 17, right?
Sure.
Firstly, it's weird how much she showers and how much we hear about it.
Well, that's very important, obviously.
Yeah.
We know the audience for this.
And a lot of people sexualize her in it as well.
Clearly.
It's like, oh, you know, she works in the bar, and the whole bar fills out because they just want to look at her. You know?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Like, okay.
Interesting.
And yeah, she showers like every night, and they go into detail about how she goes to the house where she has to shower.
Well, all right. Well, are you sure this is an official book? Where did you buy this from?
Look, everyone buy my fan fiction.
Yeah. Look, in Japan, there's a big market for that kind of material, so you may have been confused where you bought it from, is all I'm saying.
Now, but here's the thing, right? So Tifa's story, most of it, she's like 16, 17, right? Mm-hmm. Aerith's one, for the most part, she's like 8 to 10.
Okay.
Because it describes how she like escapes from the Shinra building and then like being a little girl growing up in the slums, right?
Sure.
It doesn't quite go all the way up to the beginning of the games because like she's been in some of the prequels and stuff like that, and it doesn't even go up to there.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Aerith's one that's really weird is I don't know if it's just the way it's translated or if it's how the original writer wrote it. They have her think and talk like she's an adult, even though she's a little girl. Like, adults are discussing things with her that are really important. And there's me reading this, like, you would not talk to an 8-year-old and ask her opinion on this.
So what you're experiencing here is something that's fairly common, at least in my opinion, in a lot of anime and manga, where they create these characters that are supposed to be children, teenagers, you know, they haven't really experienced life, but yet they're talking like they're 80-year-old war veterans or something. And it's like, it makes no sense. So
all the adults in her story, firstly, I find that weird. Because in the game, Aerith's adoptive mother is like one of the reasons she took her in is because she was alone.
Sure.
Right. She says that in the game, like, you know, I just wanted the company or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, even in the church, she's just by herself the whole time, right?
Yeah. Every single day someone comes in their house because they kind of like painted her adoptive mother as like some slums overlord who like runs the whole entire slums. And I'm like, this is weird. Her mum's just meant to be this woman who stays at home, sort of cooking, like tending to the house.
Yeah.
You know, she's a widow of the war that happened. In my head, she's like making her money from some kind of like money from Shinra because her husband died in duty or whatever. But in this, no, she's like a construction manager or something. I'm like, what is going on? And like all the like gangsters are like constantly trying to move in on her business and stuff. And I'm like, I got no sort of like feeling from that based on the games. Literally in the game, she is like at the sink washing a dish the entire time in the original.
They really pulled that thread to flesh out this character.
But then that's it. Is like all these people are coming around talking about like the fact that people are trying to move in on their business, blah blah blah. This gang's trying to like take over, blah. And then they're like asking this 8-year-old girl what she wants to do.
What are you going to say at that age?
Yeah, an 8-year-old girl, bear in mind, who's been held prisoner her entire life and has no knowledge of the outside world.
Right.
But yeah, that's a bit weird. Also, as well, it's got the Star Wars problem, which I joked about recently. You know how everyone was always everywhere?
Yeah.
Like in the prequels. Oh, and Boba Fett was there.
Sure.
Oh, and C-3PO was there.
Yeah.
There is legit a part where a character, for no reason whatsoever, you find out just was also friends with Aerith as a child.
Like one that was a core character, like from the game, basically.
Yep. And they're like, "Oh my god, I never knew it was him." And I'm like, "Okay, it didn't need to be.
Right.
Why did it need to be?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So are Tifa and Aerith's stories like supposed to be like intertwining of these, or no? They truly are like separate stories.
No, they really are separate. Because it keeps cutting back to the modern day of them two talking, and literally it's just like Tifa going like, "Oh, that must have been hard for you. Like, tell me more." Like that's about as deep as it gets, sort of thing. There is a little like epilogue at the end, which I was like, "Oh, is this going to tie like everything together?" No, not really. Like, it's just a little story set in that world that's like 20 pages long.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you glad you read it?
I know I've complained about it a lot. I still love that world.
Sure.
I don't think it's the best book in the world. If you're a fan of like Final Fantasy VII and that world, and you've played the spin-off games, watched the movie, yes, I'd recommend it because it's more like official canon,
right,
in that world, right?
Yeah,
I would definitely suggest it in that sense. Yourself, like you aren't that really like as big into it as me.
Right.
Like you enjoyed the games and whatnot. Yeah. I'm not going to recommend you read it. If anything ever comes back from this in any of the games, I'm going to be shocked.
Little do you know, there's some like hidden message that's going to like blow the whole story open in the next game.
Yeah, I mean, there was like one thing that kind of like some people have wondered, which I won't say because it'd be like kind of considered a spoiler, but we're going to find out 10 minutes into the new game whether that's the case or not. Like,
okay, got it.
Yeah, so it's okay, it's fine. It's not bad. It kind of fast rides some things, but.
I mean, would you? I'll put it this way: would you, whether it's this author or another, would you read more if there was another book or some other area?
Because there is actually other Final Fantasy VII novels that just never left Japan.
Sure.
If they came over, I probably would read them. But as I say, it's more the fact that I'm in love with that world.
Yeah.
You know, as much as it beats me.
And honestly, similar to what I said a minute ago about the Star Trek comics, I think that's honestly, I think these publishers probably know who their audience is. It's the established fans. I don't think they're going to start bringing in any new fans with any of these tie-in novels because it's
there's no one who like this isn't going to get recommended by Oprah or Reese.
Book of the Month Club.
Yeah, no one's going to wander into Barnes and Noble and go, "Oh, this looks like an interesting novel."
Right. Which is fine. I mean, as long as I think they know what they're doing in that regards. I just hope it's interesting enough though, where it'll still entice those fans. So,
yeah, I like if you love that universe, right? I got to stress that if you love that universe, like soft thumbs up, right? Okay. Everyone else, like, thumbs down. Like, don't bother because you're going to get nothing out of this. You're going to get, like, a very pulpy, like, novel.
Yeah. No, I understand. So if there were to be another one, whether it's already exists that just needs to be translated or something brand new, what other kind of book would you want? Like, would it be based on some other character you would love to know more about or some area?
Honestly, I'd like saying just a character we've never heard of in that world.
Okay.
Yeah, like, because... As I say, that whole Star Wars syndrome where, like, these characters don't have to be there for every single thing. It's a big old world.
Sure.
You know, write me just a random novel about someone who lives in a random town.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what I would want.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, like I said, I didn't even realize they had these books. But then again, I'm not surprised. Of course, they're going to have tie-in stuff. So, got it. Okay. Interesting. So, Yeah, I mean, are you more excited for Remake Part 2 now, or about the same?
I am excited because honestly, I've just kind of been going through a bit of a Final Fantasy VII kick recently because I saw this book came out and I bought it and reading it. And then like I've been putting the soundtrack on in the background, some songs.
Nice.
I've been getting like the itch to like play the original again.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm also like, oh well, like in a year the next remake
Right.
parts can come out or whatever. I should
And there's
hold
more
off.
games coming out too, so
Yeah. I'm just in that sort of mood at the moment.
yeah. No, that's cool. I like it. That happens to me with some games every once in a while, so it's a fun thing to experience. So I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. What? Any other final thoughts on the book? Or
No. Don't write about underage girls showering. That would be my advice to any aspiring writers.
Mm-hmm. You might want to focus that one towards the Japanese authors that do that with a lot of these games, and it's unfortunately common with that type of stuff. Yeah, it could get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Over to
right.
you then, man.
All right. So, okay, the last couple of months have been interesting because there's been two shows, like I've mentioned, Mandalorian season 3 and then Star Trek Picard season 3 that have been running concurrently. And over the last few years, it's been fun to watch because the first season of Mandalorian, I think, for the most part, pretty popular. Like people liked it. It was a nice kind of refresher from all the movies, right? Kind of that old Western feel.
Everyone was excited as well because it was just before we sort of started getting tired of Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. I think it came out at like a really solid time, and it was like Jon Favreau did a great. I'm pretty sure,
Was it
directing.
during COVID as well? I think.
Either right before or like in the midst of it, something like that.
Yeah,
Like
so everyone was at
roughly.
home as well at the same time.
Exactly. It was like one of those perfect timing type of shows. And then season 2 came out, which was, I think, still fine, but you could tell, like, okay, they're kind of getting into a rhythm now. And it's like, it was fine, but it wasn't like as mind blowing per se. Then Boba Fett came out, and it was about a dude taking a bath for 6 episodes, basically. Wasn't particularly great, right? And then now we have season 3. But before I talk about that, over to Picard. If you recall from when we talked about that last time, the first 2 seasons were a shit show. Like, it was not particularly good. There were characters people mostly didn't give a shit about. Storylines weren't particularly interesting, very like ham-fisted of like preachy type of stuff. Like, it just clearly the showrunner had no idea what they were doing other than, oh, it's
When you
Picard,
say
people.
preachy, do you mean it was like hitting you over the head with social issues? Or
Yeah, a couple of
okay,
those.
because I know Star Trek's always been about that kind of stuff.
Yes, but in a very well done, like nuanced conversational manner.
Yeah, they bring it up rather than tell you the right answer. Like
Exactly. In season 2 in particular, Picard was like just horrendous with how over the top or beating you over the head it was with the topic of that season. It's not that the issue was a bad issue to discuss, but the way they did it was just terrible, basically. So, of course, for Picard season 3, people were like, getting like I think the exact words I said when we last talked about it was like, I don't know how much worse it could possibly get. Like, I don't know. They've reached such a low. And I'm happy to say that with season 3, they brought in a showrunner who not only is good at what he does, but he's actually a longtime fan of Star Trek and understands the story. And it's a fine line, right? Like, you want to.
Was the last guy not a fan? He's like, I hate this.
Apparently not. I mean, I'm sure they were, but like clearly had a very different mindset for what they needed to do with the show. Because I think what it started out was they didn't want to just do fan service the show, which I appreciate. Like, it's a balance, right? Like, you don't want to just do nothing but nostalgia and like, member berries of all these little things. Like, they wanted to balance it. And there was like a little bit of that, but they just went so off the deep end with those first 2 seasons. It was not very good. There were bits and pieces that were good, but mostly it was pretty terrible. But like for this 3rd season, they brought in a showrunner who like legitimately loves the franchise, understands the good and the bad and where to tie things in. And I'm happy to say that the 3rd season is actually really good, like very, very good, which I don't, it's funny. The reason why I'm bringing up both Mandalorian and Picard, I mean, like I said, they both happened to finish just this past week as well. But it's funny to see like the contrast between them, where like Mandalorian I feel like started on such a high note and I feel like it's just getting worse and worse, and Picard started like shit, and I mean, at least for the final season, because they were only going to do 3 seasons, ended on such a high note. It's like the complete opposite.
Okay, sorry to go back to Mandalorian, but it's not good then?
Yeah, so season 3, because I didn't say what yet. It's 8 episodes again.
Yeah.
I could not tell you anything of consequence that happened in this season.
I mean, I felt like that with Mandalorian since it started. Other than like the last episode of the last season, nothing.
Yeah.
Like it never felt like anything was progressing. I tell you what, it felt like. You know the old sort of like serialized shows from the early 2000s. You sort of like Buffy the Vampire and X-Files, sort of Monster of the Week type shows.
Mm-hmm.
It felt more like that because every episode was like, "I need the thing," and someone goes, we'll give you the thing." Mm-hmm. You've got to help us with that monster. Okay, look after Baby Yoda. And
to be fair, though, because like X-Files, that's one of my favorite shows of all time. I'm fine. Like, I don't care about the format of the show. It's more if you're going to do something different each episode, where there is aspects of that in this season as well. I feel like it has to be interesting, but like, no joke. There was another. Okay, it's going to sound like I'm making this up, but there was an episode where he literally had to go take a bath. I'm not kidding. There's an episode where he has to go bathe in somewhere.
Vader's done it. Boba Fett's done it. Everyone needs a bath.
Everyone, apparently, Mandalorians or people with helmets love baths. I guess. Like,
a lot of sand gets built up in these planets.
Fair, that is fair, but like, do we need an episode about it? If not a whole season, I don't personally think so. I'm not into that. I guess. It's like
there's a lot of bar fanfic online. I'll have you know.
Apparently, I guess I'm just not the core fan base at this point. Maybe I just don't understand the youth of today. This is what they want.
Well, you say about core fan base, and I'm someone that I always found it weird. Those people are like crying at the trailer for Force Awakens and stuff like that. I never got like that, but I was excited to see Force Awakens.
Sure.
Like, I remember sitting in the theater, seeing the crew and being like, this is an experience. You only get to see this once every 20 years.
Right,
and I am now at the point where it's like Mandalorian Season 3's come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'll get to it eventually. Like, we sit down and watch stuff, and we talk about starting new shows rather than finish like stuff like that one that we've already started, you know?
Yeah, and the only reason why I was watching it is because I had Disney Plus still, because I had some deal with Hulu where it was only a couple extra bucks for like another month or two, and I was like, whatever, I may as well, watch it. But yeah, like they introduced some new characters. Like there was one character from the animated series which I never watched, Clone Wars, that has now has a live action.
Are you as good at me as like you can just tell by their design?
You're
like, that's like someone from the Clone Wars.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, and I'm not even saying it's like a bad design or anything either, but it's like, I found that out after the fact when I looked online. I'm like, oh, is this an established character? And it was someone named Bo-Katan who is in this series, or I don't even know if maybe she was in season 2. I don't remember, but either way, she's now a more like prominent figure in the season, and she does a great job. But like, it's just this weird story of like Mandalorian or Din Djarin, I guess, like Pedro Pascal's character, and like, Grogu, Baby Yoda, and they're just like doing things, but like none of it is interesting. There's something with the Darksaber that comes in again. Then there's like, I don't know. It's
here's
just
the thing
walking.
As well. It's like Barry's just started, right? I've not watched the new season of Barry, right?
Me either.
I've watched 3 seasons of that show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, like, season 1, a rough timeline of what happens. Season 2, season 3, right? Mm-hmm. In my head, like, I can't tell you every episode and every line, but in my head, I'm like, these are what these characters are doing. These have been their steps of progression, character development, things like that, right? Yeah. This is what they've done to get there. For the most part, with most of the characters, there's going to be parts I forgot on this, right? Mandalorian, I watched season 1, season 2, and then that Boba Fett episode that was season 2.5.
Right.
I couldn't tell you why anyone is doing what they're doing and why.
Yeah.
Just off the, like, if you're like, oh, what's going to happen in Barry season 4? I'm going to be like, well, most like, he's going to start here, like, because this happened. Whereas I've not watched any of season 3 yet. If you went, oh, what's going to happen to Mandalorian season 3? I'd be like, I think the other people in the helmets were angry about something. Like, I don't know.
Exactly. And I think what it's coming down to for me is I just don't find the Mandalorian like
Engaging
crew. Well, yeah, that type of character to me isn't enjoyable. Like, it's just boring. Like the whole having that creed and following it strictly, like it's just so boring and stupid. I don't fucking care. Like I don't get the appeal of it anymore. Like I said, I think that first season was fine, and it could have been like a limited series type of thing as something cool. But now it's gotten to the point where it's content for content's sake, and I'm like, I just don't give a shit anymore.
Tell me this: is it because obviously we know Picard season 3? That's it. It's done. Are they setting this up for more of that? Because I've not seen anything where they say like they're doing a season 4 or anything. They said they're going to do a movie to like finish this all out.
So, okay, yeah, so now to go back to Picard, I guess to really quick talk about kind of the premise of this season. So basically, like I said, first 2 seasons were a bit of a shit show. You had Picard, and then you had a couple of the other characters make cameos here and there. But season 3 was essentially created as like a true send-off for the Next Generation crew. So yes, they had the movies in the 90s, but people, for the most part, think the last couple were just like fairly lackluster. So this season was like that true last send-off of like one final mission for them. But like it wasn't like out of nowhere. It was very much, they did a great job with the story. And the thing is, they introduced some new characters that are now incredible. Like, it's not about the fact that people don't like new characters, because in the last couple seasons they introduced a crap ton, but they were all terrible. There are characters that are introduced in this season for the first time who are now becoming like franchise favorites because of how well they were written and handled, which is great. But really,
here's a question. Sorry to interrupt. Is this one of these shows where everyone's actually like still alive and still around? Not to sound mean, but like, did the whole crew come back for this?
Yeah,
like, it weren't even one of those where they're like, oh, that actor's like crazy in real life now, so they're clearly not invited.
No, the whole crew, they're all genuinely good people. So they,
but you know what I mean. Normally, when you get reunions, weren't it like Fuller House or something? Like the Olsen twins, like refused to be in it,
right?
Like,
exactly. No. In this case, they're all back, the main crew, and even other cameos that I won't spoil for people. But really, once again, it's the premise is Picard. Dr. Crusher, the doctor from TNG, has a son that Picard didn't know about, and there's this mystery of like who's the father at first, and then you find out pretty quickly who it is. But then that spirals into this bigger mystery of, well, like I said, I don't want to spoil it. It's a mystery that involves the whole original crew essentially coming back, and they do it very well. And they have some fun like characters from the original show that you weren't expecting, and then they also tie in characters from other shows as well, like Voyager and Deep Space Nine as well, which was really cool. So it's a really nice like.
So you're saying I gotta watch all of that before I can watch this?
No, you can actually. And this is the funny part. You could skip. You could watch the end of the Next Gen, like in the 90s, like the show and the movies, and skip the first 2 seasons and just go straight to this. Like, legitimately, there's almost nothing of consequence from the first 2 seasons that carries over. Like, maybe
I'm
one or two small
watch
things.
The last episode of season 3 and then declare it was awful.
You could. I mean, I would say maybe the last 2. It's kind of like a 2-parter, but you could.
Did you ever see? Sorry, but like, did you ever see like where Bill Murray talked about that he didn't like Seinfeld?
I don't think so, no.
He said that everyone was going on about it, so he watched the last ever episode when it was on, and he was like, I thought it was awful.
Well, yeah.
And it was like, it's like, you gotta watch the others.
Of course he would say that. Why am I not fucking surprised? That's funny. Good for Bill. But yeah, they did a great job. Like I said, it was a nice fine balance between something new, but also some nostalgic moments. Of course they're going to have that stuff, but it was handled by a showrunner who like has a genuine love for the show and wants to tell a good story and give a proper send off. And it ended, so back to your question of how it ended in a sense, or did they set it up for something? I had a theory for how they were going to do it, and part of what I predicted actually did come true. And once again, I'm not going to spoil it here, but as far as leaving it for something new, yes, they do. I will say it ties up this next gen era like crew pretty well. They could continue if they wanted to, but they know like, okay, they don't
Patrick
need to.
Stewart's 96.
Well, right, yeah, he's getting up there. I mean, he can still continue, but I think what I'm predicting, and they've already sort of teased this a little bit with that showrunner, as he said he wants to do a show, like he's even said this on Twitter, he wants to do a show called Star Trek Legacy, which is after this series, but is more of like kind of sampling from other characters of that era, but still pushing the timeline forward a little bit. But it doesn't have to be like a Picard show. It could be like any of the characters from like the 90s era kind of Star Trek. So if he does do that, that would be cool. And they kind of tease like what that could look like a little bit. But as far as like the next generation crew, like, yeah, this is truly, I think they're finally done with it, which I think is for the best. They don't need to keep pushing it over and over and over again, at least like in that format. If they want to have cameos here and there, I think that would be a good idea, but they do leave it open, which is nice. So it's just once again funny to see like these two shows and franchises premiering at the same time. And like I said, like at least for Mandalorian, I feel like it's just getting worse and worse. And Picard started shit and then immediately jumped to the third season.
I mean, I've never watched Star Trek, right?
Sure.
So you know when you don't watch something or you're not really involved in it, you sort of don't see that sort of fan base, right? I always say like Star Trek's my biggest like nerdy black spot because I've never seen an episode, never seen a movie. Like people talk about like, oh, Doctor Who or whatever, and I'm like, who's the Doctor now? I don't know. They got rid of that. Exactly. What I find interesting about the Star Wars fan base, though, is it seems like either you're in or you're out. Like, either you love everything new or you hate everything new. And there just seems to be no middle ground.
Yeah.
But what I have seen about Star Trek is it seems pretty like a big consensus, what little I have seen.
Yeah.
People don't like season 1 and 2 of Picard, but have enjoyed the third season.
Yeah.
Whereas with Mandalorian, everyone's either saying, oh, it's the best thing ever, or it's woke propaganda and all.
Well, and that's the thing with, and look, I've said this before, I don't think comparing the two franchise, even though I'm literally doing that right now, I don't think comparing the franchises necessarily makes sense. I feel like if the word star wasn't in both, people wouldn't compare them so directly, because to me that's like saying, do you like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones? Granted, I hate both, so I don't really care, but like to me they're both like fantasy old world type of stuff. You know what I mean?
This is never going to be solved until, you know how like YouTubers will box each other now? They need to have a Star Trek versus Star Wars boxing event where you were Mark Hamill versus William Shatner. Like Leonard Nimoy's not around anymore.
Unfortunately,
so we'll have Harrison Ford fight someone else.
Do it, fuck it. I would love to see that.
I just want like a full like roster undercard of like the guy who plays like C-3PO fighting one of the people from Star Trek.
I would love to see a crossover event like that. That would be hilarious. But it is funny to me that they keep getting compared so much when they really are very different franchises. Like, I get why people do compare them, but they are truly different things. And I think, and that's why, like, with Star Trek, it's fun. Granted, there's a lot more Star Trek content than there is Star Wars. And I think the thing that I like about it is, at least for me, we've also talked about this with other franchises, I can see the good and the bad. Like, I can very much recognize there's some shit in the Star Trek
it's almost
universe.
Like you're not terminally online.
Yeah, exactly. And I wish more people would do that. So it was nice to see that so significantly, even just within one series, like I said, with Picard 1 and 2 just not being good. And I don't know how it happened for this third season where they got this new showrunner and they decided to I don't know if they listened to the fans per se, or if they just felt it and they're like not acknowledging it, which I'm sure they're never going to acknowledge that they fucked up, but they clearly fucked up. But, who would have thought that bringing back characters people love with actually engaging storylines would be something people would want? I know, like, mind-blowing, right? So it's funny.
Let's be fair as well, is we're kind of getting out of the thing I'm about to talk about, but 5 years ago, when they were announcing all these shows and all these streaming services were starting up, it was comical what they were doing, which was just announcing random stuff.
Right.
Like they were like, oh, like people like Next Generation. Yeah, we're gonna do a Picard show. And then they'd be like, oh, like I saw a trailer the other day for they're doing a Gremlins like animated show about like how Gizmo came to be, and it looks awful.
I'm sure. Yep.
But you know, it was one of the right. What other IP have we got? Gremlins. Okay, he's cute. Do an animated show.
Hurry.
Like, what else have we got? Looney Tunes. Make sync with that. Space Jam 2. Like, you know, we kind of got out of that, but you got to think that's probably it was more the idea of what can we put on this streaming service at first, and then they had it, and they're like, all right, what can we actually like do to turn this around once they actually start making it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, and Star Trek is absolutely guilty of this because ever since CBS All Access started, which then turned into Paramount Plus, that's basically what happens because they started with Discovery, then they did Picard, and then they have Lower Decks, and now they have Strange New Worlds. They've just announced a new show called Starfleet Academy, and the thing they just announced the other day is so Michelle Yeoh, who obviously she's been acting for a long time and just got the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once, but she was in the first couple of seasons of Discovery, and she did an awesome. Like she was one of the best parts of that show. Like I love Michelle Yeoh. So they just announced a spin-off movie with her coming, I think next year, I want to say, on Paramount Plus. And I'm pretty sure they did, like, people knew that was going to happen at some point, but I'm pretty sure since she won the Oscar, they wanted to like really quickly capitalize on that. And I'm sure she's going to get a lot more expensive starting soon.
Happens with any kind of actor in their 20s or 30s if they win an Oscar, because all the big studios are like, let's lock them into a franchise.
Yeah.
Because where it was like Brie Larson won the Oscar and they're like, oh yeah, she's in Marvel now. And
right.
Like, now I was in the theater like a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "She's in Fast and Furious." Like, I didn't know.
Apparently. So, I mean, I'm definitely not complaining about seeing more of her because she's awesome. But to what you just said, they've already have a few shows, but then they've already announced more. And I think with Star Trek, I'm fine with it, but as long as they do it well, like with Discovery, they've announced that this upcoming season is going to be their last, which I'm glad.
Here's the difference as well. Star Trek started as a serialized show. Right? That was it from the beginning. And for the most part, like 40 years, that's what people have known it as, right?
60.
Yeah, I mean, there were the movies, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, when you think of Star Trek, it is a serialized show.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Star Wars was big adventures on the big screen, you know? And now they're trying to put it serialized, but they're still trying to keep that sense of like big, bangs and booms and fights and stuff like that, which works for an hour and a half, 2 hours on a big screen.
Exactly.
But over 10 weeks, people expect a bit more than just bangs and booms.
Yeah, Star Trek is incredible. That's why I like Star Trek, the movies, even though they are fun and they're usually good, that's not what I shouldn't say true Star Trek. That's not where it excels. Like Star Trek excels at long form storytelling. And that's why Deep Space Nine was like the first, not just Star Trek, but one of many shows that were inspired by it after it premiered that had multi-season, long season type of arcs. And that's why I love it. Like it's just so good, like really thoughtful stuff going on. And granted, there is action. It's not like it's all philosophical debate and just, smoking a pipe and talking like, like a philosopher. Like there are other action to it, but like that's why I've always enjoyed Star Trek personally more than Star Wars. It's not that I hate Star Wars. Like I have the movies and I have some posters. Like it's not like I hate it. I mean, I'm about to get the new Star Wars Jedi Survivor game, this week as well. So I just feel like the franchise as a whole just interests me personally. And it was nice to finally see a couple of, a season of the next gen crew that's actually like deserving of them coming back and have like a good story. It was a great send off, some emotional moments. It was funny. Like, yeah, it was like I said, I think the reason why me and so many other people have loved this season is because the bar was set so fucking low by the first two seasons that like anything would have been better.
Yeah, let's see how you feel in a couple of weeks.
Oh, I know I'm gonna love it. Believe me, I will still love it. So I'm excited for. I have to say, I'm excited for the future of Star Trek. Also, there's season 2 of Strange New Worlds happens in June. Oh, and like I mentioned early, I've been getting back into comics, like single issue, like weekly, monthly comics again, like going to the comic shop. Yeah, I know. I'm not the most. I don't have the most friends, right? I'm just gonna sit at home reading comics. I get it, the stereotype, but they're great, man. Star Trek comics lately have been great, and it's tying into the shows and some other stuff. So it's been a great time lately to be a Star Trek fan. But with Star Wars, like I know they announced, there's like they announced like some movie stuff recently, right?
Yeah, I'll believe it when it comes out.
Well, right, who knows? But I'm like, I saw that announcement. And I'm like, I just don't give a shit.
Yeah, they announced like 5 movies, and they're like, it's about this person. I'm like, who's that? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just past the point of caring with it now.
Yeah. So, granted, if it was, I think some of what they announced might be completely new stuff, like far in the past, far in the future from all the Skywalker stuff. Which, like, cool. I hope they do it well, but now for me, the bar is very low with Star Wars, and so I hope they do well. I don't know.
Just depressing.
Yeah, a little bit. Or what's that? What did I say the last time we talked about this? How does it feel from our other favorite channel? How does it feel to live old enough to see all your favorite franchises burned out in flames?
Yeah.
But not for Star Trek. Not for Star Trek. It is.
Well, I also just love their other quote that was like, "Remember when Star Wars was just 3 great movies."
Right. Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
That was it.
Yeah. I do remember.
So I'm sensing thumbs up and a thumbs down.
Yeah, so for Picard, so it's tricky. For Picard as a whole, like all 3 seasons, it's going to have to be in the middle. Season 3 was incredible. Huge thumbs up. First 2 seasons, not the best. Mandalorian, it's kind of the same, but like in the opposite direction. It started off pretty good in season 3. I'm going to have to give a thumbs down. I watched 8 episodes, couldn't tell you what the hell happened. And I felt like it's one of those moments where I'm like, I must be crazy here, because I looked online. I'm like, what did anyone else, not that I usually give a shit, as we've talked about before, but I'm like, okay, what did other people feel about this? And I saw some people, it was a bit of a mixed bag, but I saw a couple news outlets or review places saying like, oh, the ending of Mandalorian was so perfect, it sets it up for the future. And when the ending happened, I literally out loud went like, oh, like I was just watching and I'm like, oh, there must be like one more scene, and it just ends. And I'm like, what like literally nothing of value happened. And I once again think I'm the crazy person
if you
here.
watch the Clone Wars, you'd understand.
Oh yeah, well clearly, yeah. Sorry, let me get back to you after I sink 800 hours into supplemental material here. Oh my god. So yes, thumbs down for Mandalorians, at least season 3, and then at least for season 3 for Picard, huge thumbs up, and it was nice to see. So,
all right.
But yeah,
a bit of a wavier episode overall.
Yeah, kind of a little bit of a mixed bag, so to speak. So, but yeah, if you've watched Mandalorian or Picard, or if you've read some Final Fantasy tie-in novels, let us know what your favorites are. What do you think is going to happen for the future of any of these franchises? It could literally go anywhere at this point. So there's a lot. But yeah, if you haven't watched before, make sure to subscribe, comment, let us know what you think. And then, until next time, we'll catch you then. Take it easy.
Bye.